Okay. Hi guys, I'm Ken McDonagh. I'm from deargreenplace.org, and I am from a project which is completely developed through the efforts of volunteers. And we are in Glasgow, and we have a map which shows you all the eco-friendly resources within that area. And I'd like to pass out some of the paper maps that we've built in conjunction with the online map to represent the same data. So the green map is a global effort using a standardized icon set developed by a lady called Wendy Brower in the States. And she was a graphic designer, and she developed this icon set that represented eco-friendly resources. And then she just kind of pimped it through the 90s, and now it's a worldwide standard, and it's really nice. And the idea is that you have this unique icon system, but you have these locally developed maps. So the individual maps they all have that kind of unique charm to the places themselves, but they all have the standardization where people can go to these places and they can see where all the eco-friendly resources are. Eco-friendliness, I mean, it has its... I think they call them sustainable resources, and you can stretch the term as far as you want because, I mean, it covers like cycling paths, it covers second-hand shops, it covers like recycling places and stuff. And yeah, so this is our map that we've just got handed around. And yeah, we've also developed the website. If we can just cut here. And we've got this crazy... X Windows is doing craziness. But if you can imagine, you go here to our website, and you live in Glasgow, and you want to find somewhere to take back batteries or something. And commonly in areas you refer to the west end or the east end of the area. So, excuse me, it's going extraordinarily slow. And it's because we got to log in. Excuse me. Yeah, and so it shows you these resources. And this is a Ruby on Rails solution that we've built ourselves. And you can search by postcodes, and you can search by tags of what the places offer. And yeah. Sorry. Oh yeah, it's a PDF. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, excuse me, guys. Could you fix this, Joe? This one. Could you make it go forward? That's right. Ha. Okay. And I'd like to go through some of the problems and experiences we've had through deciding to localize our open source effort, because I've been involved in a lot of open source projects, and this one was slightly different. When I was working in the place that I was at about 2 years ago, I was approached to develop this website, and I was going to develop. At the time, I was a web developer, but it was actually, to be honest, too much of a hassle to get paid to do it because you had to get sign-off and everything. So I was quite interested in working with this local group called the Electron Club, who were like they were like a little collection of hackers and people interested in tech who got together to make stuff happen. I was like, let's take the project there. That'll be cool. And they were all for it. So we went there, and there was a lot of different experiences, and I want to talk about them, and then Joseph's actually going to go through the technical outline of our application. So maybe if you wanted to take your application to the community, you could do so using our basis of blueprint. So first of all, before I do that, I want to kind of touch on what we share in common with normal open source projects. Normal open source projects, you're looking to effectively solve something once, and then you're not going to have to do it again. With our project, we went in, and we wanted to do that, but we at the time there wasn't like a great choice of projects to choose from in this space. So we had a PHP version of the green map, but that didn't work out so well. And then we developed this Ruby on Rails one, and hopefully, we will develop this, and it will be taken on by other people as well. We hope to push it out to Edinburgh next, and if any takers are here, yes. And then we got the transparent quality. This is the great thing about open source. You've got real quality in your code that's guaranteed, and it reflects both in the quality of your developers and in the quality of the project. Because if you're working in an environment that encourages this kind of transparency, which we are, because it's especially important in a community project. It should be important anyway, but in a community project, you want to know there's no funny business going on in your business logic. But when you have this transparency, the developers in the project can all have their code out in the wild. Sometimes if you're a developer and you go to interviews, they want to see some of your professional grade code, and you can't always show that because the apps you've always worked on have been proprietary, and so you can't show a lot of the code you've got in the wild out there. But our developers really benefit from this, and we encourage them to. I'm going to nip out again here. I'll be stung for this. We encourage them to really talk online and discuss. Like through this is on Google Code, and discuss like commits, and then review one another's commits out in the open. And this is great because for an employer here, you're looking through the code and you're saying, these guys have real skills of interpretation. They're really looking through the problems and they're really discussing the design problems. And the code review tools are excellent. So you got your diff tools on here. It's probably logged out. Yeah, and when you have all of this online as an open source project, the tools can spider the repo as well, and the individual other third-party APIs. This one is on Olo, which indexes the green map code. This shows my commits. I have racked up 1 year and 4 months of Ruby experience. So you know I've got some Ruby experience, whereas like other guys could go to an employer and they say, well, what have you done? And you go, well, I don't know. But you can really go and you can check through it yourself if you want. So that's important as well. Right back to the PDF. It's the preview, and then we're gonna do this, and then yes. Okay, I won't go again. So transparent quality, we have that in common as well. And the member-chosen tools. Again, sometimes when you're working in a professional environment, you're not always working with the most ideal tool set. You're working with tools that get the job done. But when you're working in your free time, you want to know you're working with in something pleasurable in your free time. You don't want it to be an absolute chore to work with stuff. And so Ruby on Rails fits the bill here because Ruby on Rails is just not a chore. It's just really nice. And sharing learning, because sharing on a human level is just really fun. But obviously sharing promotes the growth of really good ideas. It stops redundancy, and we can all benefit from what we're sharing. But what are the projects that we're commonly sharing in open source nowadays for Rails developers? Well, we're commonly thinking about open source as Ruby and Rails and Mongrel and Capistrano. And these are all pieces of our daily puzzles as developers. When we put these pieces together, Ruby scripts it up, and Rails gets something done fast, and Mongrel deploys it, and Capistrano redeploys it. But open source projects usually are loads of little pieces to our daily puzzle, depending on the abstraction, of course. I mean, they all just solve little bits of problems, like an IDE where we can make things happen and get this where you store your code. But developers are always being really excellent to one another because we're working on our circle of influence. We're slowly getting all of our pain areas, we're identifying them and making them better openly for everyone to benefit from. But what I am asking is are we really satisfying everyone with open source all the time? Are we really caring about everyone? I don't think we really are. I think the majority of times in open source projects we're really caring about our pain points. But there are applications out there like for dealing with email and web browsing and blogs where we are satisfying the pieces of other people's problems as well. But the pieces may not be able to be taken up quite as quickly as you might imagine, because like some people couldn't even get to the point where they would deploy a WordPress solution, never mind a Ruby on Rails solution. So we need to maybe take a more active hand in the approach to getting the kind of software we would like to work with, the kind of software we would like to see other people using, adopted within the community in general. And I think that when we're thinking about making our open source projects, we are usually considering the open source project going out into the wild and then affecting the world as a whole. Like we're just thinking we'll get the open source project out there, and then people will take it, and we want to make a big effect. We really want to make an effect with our software. But what I am saying is maybe we could start a little smaller. Like right now you're here. This is where you are. And if you just work on your local area of influence, just work on your local area of influence first, then maybe you could prioritize the kind of software that you develop based on real people. Maybe it would mature faster. Maybe its uptake would be taken up faster. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to see what would happen when we were actually working with people in the community to develop the project. What would happen? And so we did find that there was a big uptake of it. Like when I went to these community projects, and I said, so you guys, what kind of software are you using? Usually they're using spreadsheets, and they're using anything to get by, because there's a common theme where they have no technical ability. It's a big lack for them, because community service is sometimes dealt as like a punishment. People do not think of sharing community service like their skills, which is technically is community service. If you're giving your time to the community, then you wouldn't do that. I'm not suggesting that you go and you paint a wall, you pick up rubbish, but if you contribute your skills to your application being taken up in your local community, you're doing some real good there. And it doesn't have to be your application. It can be other applications you enjoy using, or it could be Ruby on Rails applications or gems that you want to get things out there. You might want to take a more active hand in their adoption within the community. But if you do that, what will you get out of it? And what you'll get out of it is actually you'll find that unlike when you go to like a general open source community, like if you go to a global audience and you try to appeal to people, hey, I've got an open source project and I'm trying to build a developer base. Do you want to be a designer on my project? Do you want to be marketing on my project? You'll find it usually falls on deaf ears, because there's a million open source projects out there. But unlike that, when you go locally, you will find there is no shortage of volunteers. It's weird. There's so many volunteers and resources in your local community. They are not all Ruby developers. They all have their own skills. They're illustrators and researchers and community promoters. And they share in common the fact that they want to affect their local community. And so you can capitalize on the fact that these guys want to make a difference, and you want to make a difference. But you can make that difference once as an open source solution, and then you can push it out. Maybe if you develop that difference, then other communities can take that on as well. So it's just another kind of conceptual way to go about developing your open source application. It doesn't have to be a completely free solution either. It could just be offered as very cheap to the community. I'm just talking about getting your local vicinity involved in your applications, and you giving them a help to adopt it as well would make a big difference. And what you offer these people is a completely different mindset. These people do not think in terms of automation, deployment, data aggregation, and overview tools. They haven't a clue about even these terms. They don't know about these things. And when you approach them, you're like a good Samaritan. They're like, you're going to do what? You're going to provide me with what? You really help these guys, and you'll find that they will want to help you in return as well. So let's imagine you're pumped, and you're like, yeah, I could take my application, or I could take these applications, I can make them affect my local community. Well, how would you do that? Well, if you were going to do that, immediately, the first thing you should start doing is you should just solve a little bit of the problem, like a tiny little bit of the problem. With Rails, you can do that immediately. You can make a CRUD app immediately. And let's say you want to make a big difference. There's homeless people in your town. Let's say you're making some kind of homeless list. Well, first of all, you just make a directory listing of all the places they can go, and to have that concrete there that you can show people on a laptop, that's going to make all the difference. Because a lot of people can't visualize anything. When you go to people and they go, I've got this idea, I've got this application, it does this, 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 it's going to be really good. They're like, yeah, that's going to be good. But they don't have the same idea in their head as you. You need to get something out fast. And you'll find that people only join successful projects, right, in general. And your application has to be seen as being successful before people are actually going to join you. So you need to create momentum immediately. You need to get something out there. You need to get something moving, and you need to make something, just a little bit of something. And if you've identified something that needs like an overhaul, you don't necessarily have to just start a little bit of this. Just poke it in between. Just make a little bit of the solution, and then suggest that they slowly migrate towards it. A big, important fact is if you want to actually involve yourself within community proceedings, if you want to get people out there from loads of different professions working with you, then you're going to have to really take the lead. See, you don't have to be the lead. You don't actually have to be this grand leader, but you need someone to appear like they're taking the lead, because you need someone to fill in all the holes. In our project, we had a lot of technical goings on. We had the paper map being designed and developed, and we had all the data collection and stuff. And people were moving in amongst themselves. And if you don't have someone to kind of maven between all those guys and go and chat with them all and make sure everybody's in the know, then you're going to feel a little bit lost. So you need to get someone to at least appear to be the lead. I'd really recommend that. And then when you get that person, you need to start delegating responsibility immediately. Right? When I first was at the meetings, and people just started coming along, man. It was a bit like wow, these people all want to help. I'm like, hi, I've heard there's a green map here, and it's just random individual, and you're like yeah, and you feel a bit like, well, I don't want to tell this guy what to do, but you have to tell him what to do, because active projects have things to do. And they expect things to be done. They expect to be told things to do, and that's why they're there. You should constantly think to yourself, like, okay, so I've got that guy. Give them little bits to do. This is from the perspective of a coder, by the way. I'm a software developer, not a project manager. But addressing the broader tasks that come with a small project, I think this stands to reason with all projects. And then you really have to, I'd advise, getting a physical place. We were really lucky because we had the Electron Club. And the Electron Club is this place where all the hackers hang out, and is full of really old computers that no one uses. But it's an excellent place to congregate. It's held in the CCA. And we really pimped this meeting, because you should pimp these meetings. These are like times where you can really get things done. Everyone has put time aside here. You see them, you're talking to them. If you're working on an open source project just on the web, then you're not sure like when anyone's actually going to do anything, or when that guy's going to be wherever he is, or when he's going to reply to your email. If you're working on like the Apache Commons project, you've got to post in the group mailing list, and then you've got to wait for a response. You're not allowed to contact any of the other developers. There's a process in place, whereas everyone's going to be there, and problems are solved inadvertently by just talking face to face all the time. You'll know that, but just as a developer. Also, meeting with people is like, it gives you this kind of natural drive. It moves the project forward more every time you go and you meet with people. And people learn lots. They learn from not just all the programmers, and the programmers do learn a lot because they're all pairing, but together. I think Joseph will touch on that. But also, I mean, you're cross disciplines. You get to do everything, even though that. I'm a software developer on the project. I did loads of design and did loads of talking through ideas and talking through process and stuff. And you get to learn a lot from the whole process just by meeting. But it's important, if you do have meetings, be vigilant. These meetings you have to achieve things at each meeting. You can't have people just coming out of their spare time. If you get like a cartographer in our case, or someone with a specialist profession like a marketer or something coming along to your meeting, they come one night and there's nothing happening. There's no momentum. They are not going to come back. And if you don't show them that there's constantly going to be things being done at these meetings, they're not going to come back. So you want to constantly make sure that you've planned ahead. You've planned at least one thing that's going to come out of that meeting. So that one thing was done that night, even if you have to do it, even if you have to just make sure it gets done, that one thing is going to be done. And as long as you do that, people will respect that. They'll be like, yeah, things are really moving here. I've been to other meetings where other community services where just nothing happens. Oh, there's an E. Right. This is to explain. If you are a software developer, you may be used to working with software developers, right? There's an upside and a downside to working with people in the community. The upside is, okay, you get loads more people, loads more skills. But if you open those doors, you will get what in Glasgow we call weirdos through the door, right? And it shouldn't really have an E, I don't think. But weirdos. These guys are like people with personality disorders, and I want to just give you some quick tips on how to address these people, because for me as a software developer, and not like trained in management or whatever, they are a task all the time. But the most important thing is to know that is to remain really calm, remain really passive. And just know that any sign of outward arrogance by these people is a sign of inward insecurity. So you got to pity them. So it's just step back. So the first ones are the pessimists and the contrarians. And these guys they just seem to just give you constant questions, no matter how silly they are. They just constantly bringing the whole thing down, and they act as a small poison throughout like the proceedings of every meeting, because they just make everything so glum and down. What you got to do is you got to don't get dragged into their glumness. Keep positive and make them rationalize on a totally passive level their complaints. And when they have to rationalize them through, you'll find that they either have to rationalize a solution to which they are practically committing to do, or they're going to have to just, oh, well, maybe it's not so bad, which is common, actually. The agreeable procrastinators. These guys, don't let them overcommit. These guys are really afraid of letting you down, believe it or not. But what they tend to do is they say, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I'm totally going to do that. I'm going to commit to 8 hours a week. I'm going to work 8 hours a week on this, and we're going to get this done. We're going to get this done, this done, this done. And you're like, yeah, okay. But since they overcommit, they always don't deliver. They're so caught up with not disappointing you in the short term. And that's a win, because you leave and you go, that's great, that guy's going to do 8 hours, that's brilliant. But they don't actually do it. And that's really frustrating. So what you want to do is you want to make them undercommit drastically. Make them undercommit drastically, because then the worst case scenario is that they don't do that. But the chances are that they'll feel a lot better about doing just a little tiny amount. And they're more likely to do it. A worst case scenario with these guys, on a side note, is that if you have like a really, that would be nice to have feature, if you tell them to do that and they don't ever come back with it, you don't lose. But if they come back with it, you win. So it sorts itself out. And then the last ones are overbearing personality and hostile, aggressive, spelled wrongly. These guys have to be at the center of attention no matter what, and no matter if they're just talking drivel or they are just talking. They talk incessantly, and they can be passive aggressives as well, and they just, again, they're a kind of poison in the group, and it doesn't make for a good atmosphere. But what you can do is, if these guys keep speaking, you can't do anything about it. You wait until you're sure you've heard their point. You've heard what the base of their point is. They'll keep on going. But you've heard the base of their point. And then you interject and you say, I want to say this. And then they'll cut you off. But you say, excuse me, let me finish. Be assertive. Keep eye contact. Be assertive. And then they'll remember that they have to be polite. I find that's all you need. These things are all you need to tackle the majority of problems. And that's me 2 years with a lot of sometimes quite random individuals, and that's all you need. They're all the tools you need. Oh, and that's, well, I hope that's given you like some food for thought for, like, yeah, you can maybe take your project locally. You could do something to localize your project. But just to take away, I want you to know that it won't happen overnight. Remain really positive. And, yeah, I wish you the best of luck with it. And now I'm going to pass you over to Joe.
Hi there, I'm Joseph Wright. I was a technical lead on the Glasgow Green Map effort, along with Kevin. And I'm going to talk to you about a few of the adventures we've had and things we've learned over the course of running an open source localized project for 2 years. So I'd like to take you back to when we started the project, which was March 2007. It's at this point the EU was celebrating its 50th anniversary. Rails 1.2.3 was just out, and the Google Maps API had been at version 2 for just over a year, so it was relatively settled. I mean, at the same time, we were seeing the word mashup appear left, right, and center, just as loads of people started using all these open APIs that had suddenly appeared on the internet, so all of a sudden you can mash up Flickr with a Google map or something. And after a little while of doing this on my own, I met Kevin at a web developers meetup in Glasgow, and he told me about this project he was involved in where you could actually put this Google Maps stuff to good use. Okay, so at first we had some data about where the different ecological sites are in Glasgow, which we were using for the printed map, which you should all have a copy of. So we already had the data available. So at first, we just wanted to make a HTML and JavaScript version, just a static version for it first. So we had to look around at the different mapping APIs we had at the time. So the big ones, as they are now, is there's the Google, Yahoo, and Live Maps. So originally, when the APIs came out, it was only Google that had a JavaScript one. The rest of them were like push an XML request, and then it would just display it on a map for you. So with the Google one, you're allowed a lot more, control over what you can show. But at the same time, there was actually a lot of thought saying that perhaps this stuff won't be free forever. So what is the business model for Google Maps? And they were saying that APIs could start charging per transaction for API. So we were a little bit worried about vendor lock-in at this point in case one of them changes their terms of service. So we're quite keen to use an abstraction library. We started off doing that, but when we realized there's two other features we needed. The first one is a concept called geocoding, which is a translation of like an address, say 7 Union Street, into the actual longitude and latitude coordinates. And these services aren't actually free usually, but the Google Maps API doesn't actually support it, but Google Search did, so we managed to use something there to get that to work. And the other feature we really wanted was overlays on maps. So this is the idea that you can actually draw on top of the map. For a few other green maps we found as well, we actually had some artists in and they'd redrawn the city centers. And the Google Maps API allowed you to replace the underlying tiles in case we ever wanted to change the appearance of the map, in case you didn't want to see slide imagery of something instead. So we looked about for other projects, thinking someone else has probably used Google Maps in this way to represent data. And sure enough, we found an open source effort in Ireland in Cork, the Cork Green Map. And we started emailing the devs off in their team and talked to them over Skype. And eventually they released their source code to us, which was just about 8,000 lines of PHP. And it was quite good because we could see the database schema, so we already had a model in place, so we didn't have to come up with that ourselves. And they had quite good interactions with the Google Maps API, so you could see how to do a lot of things, including there's groupings of the markers. Because if a Google Map you put too many markers down, then the process just doesn't work very well on low-end machines. So we did play about the Cork API quite a bit, but it was using quite a lot of the relatively new PHP 5 libraries that none of us had experience with. So we started looking around to see what we could do after 2 months of procrastinating with the code base. Myself and Kevin, through our jobs outside of the Google, the Green Map, are Java developers, and so Java is quite a big community, and it's one that's continually baited, saying it's going to die by something else. And of course, we were very aware of all the different Rails. Well, of course, visually looks like just like hype, but obviously it was starting to kick off quite well. So we thought, probably best to take a look at this. So we went onto their website, watched a 2-minute video complete with all the whoops comments as someone makes something incredible. It would just take 10 times as long as pretty much anything else that was around at the time. So we went out and bought the books on the Wright there and worked our way through them, and then we started off making our first version. So this is the first version we had of the Green Map using our spike of Rails. So originally we had all the markers you can see there in a spreadsheet. So we had to create a script to parse the spreadsheet and then make a Ruby migrations from it. That worked quite well. That's on our source code repository if anyone wants to reuse that. Because if you're using a community effort, originally you won't actually have the database in place. So we found that mapping it in spreadsheets worked quite well if we kept the spreadsheet under version control. So this version here, we got most of the functionality working, but it seems other people don't think something's actually working until it's been designed as well, which is a fair enough comment. So I just added this little gradient to the background, and that was it, and that was version 1. I was allowed to call it version 1 as soon as it had a gradient. Got a logo in there as well, just to make it definitely version 1. And around this time, we also had our paper map that came out, which I think you've got a copy of. I think it's the first version or the second version, because we've had 2 print runs of it. So around this time, our first version came out, and we also had the website as well, so we got some press in the local newspapers, and that was pretty good. And along with that, this success came quite a lot of new people. So we have this weekly meeting at the CCA, as Kevin said, and we had people, like 2 new developers a week would just come in. They hadn't used Ruby or Rails, they didn't really know what we were using, so they just wanted to get involved with our project. And so we were first, we spent a long time getting Ruby, Rails, Subversion, and a database set up on the machine. And by the end of that time, after you've done that with someone, basically that was the end of the night. And then they went off with a pristine new Rails install, and we never saw them again. So we knew we had to do something different here in order to mitigate this. So we came up with a VM image of Ubuntu, which already had all the user land installed already. So we could just give them the DVD, say, put that in, here's a VM viewer, and they're working set up, and they can get them right working on a feature straight away. So once we had these people that stayed after we got them installed in shorter time, we then started realizing that with the amount of people we needed, and no one was actually a Ruby on Rails developer before, so we adopted pair programming to allow, dissemination of data a lot easier, and we could share experiences. And we continued doing the pair programming on the Thursdays every time we came along. So one of the things we did notice was, with this larger group, we would need to communicate a lot better, and we need all the things in place. So at first, as we come from an extreme programming background, we use a tool called XPlanner, which is a Java web app which allows you to map stories and tasks and iterations. And it's a way programmers think about achieving things around, and you can put estimates in and how long you think it's going to take to do something, and then you can look back and see how wrong you were when you actually put the real data in. But you get better at it over time, is the theory. But we tried using non-technical people with XPlanner, and it just didn't work. We tried many times to teach people how to break things to stories and the tasks, but it just wasn't working. So we went with the original Rails app, which I'm sure you've heard of. And we found that to be very successful, actually, for retaining members. Because what we would do after we've set them up with their VMware image, everything's ready, we'd sign up for the Basecamp account as well. And we'd take a photo of them there and then, and just have them there. And then, like Kevin says, we'd then give them a small task to achieve for the next week. So we had this great sense of progress that we could see week on. And people could come in and see that, wow, this is actually moving along. I'm not wasting my time here. We can see that things are better now than they were last week. So once we got them hooked into Basecamp and we had them with their VMware image, then we were in a very good state. Along with, you can't obviously just use Basecamp to develop some software. So at the time we chose what we knew best, which was Google Code, as we wanted to use Subversion for the project at this point. Google Code is quite useful because it also has a wiki, a bug tracker, and it also has code review tools in it as well, which Kevin showed you earlier. And we found that to be very useful for doing the code reviews for when people are working outside of the day we met. And also one thing we did discover when we were working is people code at really different times. So we had some people committing before 9 a.m., some people on their lunch break, and even some people at like 3 a.m. And the commit comments on 3 a.m. stuff is pretty weird. We needed to host our software somewhere. So originally we were planning to use the connection available at the building that we had our meetings in. So we bought a small server, very cheap one, and had it there, and it was all very good. And then the next day we found out it had been turned off. And this basically became a very repetitive theme, and we started measuring uptime in hours, and it wasn't a good state of affairs. So we still needed quite a lot of different tech running, so we went down the VPS route instead for the hosting. But of course, now you've got the VPS in place, it's a higher level barrier to entry for someone to actually get their changes online, and people could see what they've been doing. So what we did is we made a little script which just every half hour checked out the latest version from Subversion, and then that would go online in parallel to our production version as well. And we found this is very good because then you could get people along at the first meeting, they're all set up and everything, and they can do a commit, and then it's online, and they can go and show their friends and other people, hey, look, this is mine. And it worked really well for retaining members that way, because we feel people could contribute much faster. For our production deployment, though, we still wanted to have some control around it. So eventually we adopted Capistrano and Webistrano, which are tools that really automate simple tasks for you using Ruby. And yeah, actually, the guy that's actually did that is doing a presentation tomorrow if you're interested in how you can automate your deployments of Rails. Quite a lot of things happened over the last 2 years, as you would expect, but it do totally change your view of developing software, and a lot of things become a lot easier. So for the green map itself, main things were probably the rise of the post-prototype JavaScript libraries like Mootools and jQuery. Though in our case we use jQuery, and it really helped us minimize our JavaScript footprint and really changed the way the way people appreciate JavaScript. Is previously I think people were very much into this JavaScript thing should just work, it's not really a language. And then they get really frustrated when it doesn't work because they don't understand how the underlying version works. But I found with jQuery, people have got a lot more respect for the language now, and that means people generally go about it a much better way. The other good thing about jQuery we found was that the masses of plugins that have been developed around it as well. So like the one we have for our image map to show which area, so you got rollover there and you got automatic highlight thing. That's really good little effects that wouldn't have been possible when we actually started the project very easily. The other change that happened around the JavaScript side of things that wasn't good was the post office owns the geocoding data between longitude, latitude, and postcode, and they told Google they would have to charge royalties for it. So that means you can't actually look up postcodes anymore to a very precise amount. You can do like G11, but you can't do G11.6xe. So we had to write some triangulation code after, it's in production. It just stopped working one day. So we had to write a little triangulation routine based on all the points we have, because we have over 100 places, so we can get it pretty close to where we think they want to be. The other good thing that has happened, though, is Google Street View, because originally we'd gone around and taken photos of all these different charity shops and environmental organizations around Glasgow. And as of last week, you can now just drag and drop a man, and then you can just see exactly that shop then. But we're not sure how often that's going to be updated. But it's a very effective overlay, and that will change the way we're going to have to think about it. Okay, so over this last 2 years, I've been pretty impressed with the caliber of the different people we've had coming through. So the great designers and artists and coders, and we've managed to instill confidence in quite a few people that were good programmers but really wanted to cut their teeth on a group project. I'm using the concept the processes we put in place on the green map on a new project now, which is for music reviews locally again in Glasgow, and it's not exactly the same setup, but we're using a thing called Love by Less, which is a template you can put on top of Rails, so it gives you the user authentication and forums for free, and then you start from there and you just customize it to however you want. Another thing that came up is the Blueprint CSS template library. So again, this gives you a 2-column layout or whatever you want, and you can just start from there and totally manipulate it to wherever you want to see things. So so if you're interested in starting your own localized project, and I do recommend you do, there's certain things you need to have in place. You definitely need to have somewhere to meet in person, offline, and to do once a week, because this is where we got most of our members from. People would occasionally email and say, I'm going to meet you up if you're going to be there, but just the people that walked in off the street were some of the people that made the biggest difference to our project. Obviously, you need another place to meet online, because, we met once a week, you probably would do something similar, or maybe bi-weekly. And we've used Basecamp for that, but again, that was a great thing for retaining people as soon as they came in. Develop together, so this is basically, you will need an integrated environment to do your coding in. So your big choices are there, like GitHub or Google Code, which you need something that will allow you to do reviews and bug tracking as well. And it's probably a good idea to go for the cloud computing software as a service route of using a service online rather than hosting it yourself. We did have a few sysadmins who were interested in joining us, but we really wanted something to not have to worry about these services. So we quite enjoyed, using Google Code for this. And the final thing is you have to make sure you're showing progress, otherwise, in order to entice people to come back. So as if you're having the same conversations each time you go along, then people won't really they won't really believe that it's worthwhile their spare time, because it's something they want to do for fun, because they probably were bored originally. So yeah, it's important to show progress as well. So yeah, sorry. Okay, so that's about what we have. So yeah, is there any questions? Hi. All right. Yeah, for money-wise, we managed to get a grant off the council for renewable. Yeah, Kevin was more involved in the actual application for that, so I'll let him handle that.
When I was saying it again about the lack of, there was no lack of volunteers, I'll also like to emphasize the fact there's no lack of funding, because again, if you're going to make a local effect in your local community, there's funding there, because councils want skilled individuals to take part in these projects, and they have an awful hard time getting technical abilities involved in these projects. There's a big gaping hole, and you'll find if you're actually going to make an impact in your local community, there is funding there. And if you talk to me after the show, I'll give you some links. Yes, I mean a lot of councils do have a listing of areas within the community that you could take advantage of. They'll suggest places where you can go. The CCA for us was an obvious choice. That wasn't done through the council. That was done through just friends of friends and hearsay. But there are community areas where you can meet. Yeah, absolutely.
There will be some groups as well that already have an area. There will be some groups as well that already have an area dedicated to themselves, and you could start a localized project there. If it's not people that have technical skills already or interests, then there's a good chance they'll have the building already you could work in. Okay. Frustrating. So, okay. Yeah, probably we're going through all the setup of on the developers' machines when they come along, and they are really interested, but a lot of people hadn't seen version control before, so lots of programmers just do stuff on their own in their spare time, and they weren't aware of these concepts, and pretty much getting those people set up, and they're really excited, and then we didn't actually get them to make a difference at the time, and probably seeing them go away, that was probably the most frustrating moment. Yeah.
You want to try and use VMware if you can. Just get an image of what you want running, so that when you get there and you're going to make changes, you're actually making changes. You're not just getting these guys up and running again and again and again, because that is frustrating. You lose your mind. Thanks a lot, guys.